Well, hello there. Yeah, I'm doing a second video today. That's very unlike me, but some things came up and I thought I'd share them with you. And that is the realization that spirituality is not a place, it's not a sect, it's not a cult, it's a process, like Pilgrim's process. Over the past 55 years, I have collected a lot of spiritual books. And the reason I did that, and I've talked a little bit about my past, is that I grew up as a foster kid in a family that was really, really not on the same page with me in terms of how I think or what I felt or anything. We were just a mismatch. Okay. And so I began spiritually searching at a very, very young age. I was only 6 years old when my foster mother was going through her divorce, and I was sent off to have a vacation with my grandparents. All right. And I ran into a woman on the Venice Pier boardwalk, and she had a New Testament in her hand about this size. And she told me about the teachings of Jesus. And I said to myself, that sounds very sensible. I think I'm going to try that. Okay. So at that moment, in July of 1950, you can say that I gave my life to Jesus. All right. And that's where it started. But when I was 9, I was abducted. And I had 12 hours of missing time. And after that, I went through these fainting spells and things that were not normal. And when I was 12, I went through another spiritual experience where I went through a meditation, and it reorganized my whole way of thinking. And of course, I've always been weird. I've always been odd. And my foster father had me study with the Catholics. And my boyfriend, Chuck, had me study with the Mormons. And my friend Larry from school had me study with the Witnesses. Okay, so I was always attracted to the Christian covenant. And I began my actual religious life at the age of 21 in 1965 when I began studying with Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was a witness for 12 years, and I was a good one. Okay, I went out in the service and I did this and I did that. But I was living with an unbelieving husband who literally dumped me because of the witness label. Okay, his mother was a Bible Belt Baptist who felt that the witnesses were damned because they didn't believe in the Trinity. Okay. And so she influenced him, and he dumped me for. He never really said why. It was, I don't like your religion, in 1970, and so I continued as a witness until 77, and then because I had to support myself and take care of my mother and take care of my children, I began to feel burdened by the amount of responsibilities that I had. So I wrote a letter to the governing body and asked them how come I was stuck with more responsibilities than I could, and what were they doing? And I was pretty angry, I have to admit. And so they disassociated me. All right, that was 1978. And so then I became an Episcopalian, and I'm still technically an Episcopalian because the Episcopal Church is broad enough and wide enough to accept whatever beliefs you happen to have. And I found in the Episcopal prayer book that it covered a lot of areas of metaphysics that the witnesses never covered. Okay, the witnesses are eminently practical about behavior, okay? They tell you how often you need to study and what you need to study and what you need to know about. And, it's like school. Every meeting is like school. And I found that very helpful and useful. I mean, their little books are all on topic. You want to know what witnesses think about sexual abuse. You want to know what they think about blood transfusion. It's all just in the book. You know how to behave, which is what I felt I needed at the time. But when I became an Episcopalian, I realized that grace and mercy were larger than just how we're going to behave today and what we are going to think today. Because I already realized that what we know and what we believe actually progresses and changes from day to day and year to year and decade to decade. For one thing, we are lied to about everything. All right, we are lied to, we are told dogma, doctrine, propaganda, the secrecy covers the UFOs, secrecy covers the Bigfoot, secrecy covers the war in northern Syria, secrecy covers who is eligible for medical care and who is on some kind of blacklist. Secrecy covers your credit score, your credit history. Secrecy, it's all in the record keeping. And if the record keeping wasn't accurate in the first place, your life history, according to the government, may be accurate, may not be accurate. All right. So I began to realize as an Episcopalian the difference between the hierarchy that is concerned about behavior and the hierarchy that's concerned about etheric, subjective realities. All right. And I began to notice that the people that were in the Episcopal Church had made compromises that witnesses would never make with their behavior. They were pretty far out there in accepting gender roles and family arrangements and behavior that the witnesses would never accept. All right. So then I began looking around some more. I attended Trappist monastery retreats, and I experienced the whole soul devotion of the Trappist mindset. And those Trappists get up at 3:30 in the morning to do a Vespers service that I found very meaningful. Their connection to God is tactile. It's real to them. All right. So then I went through a period of dealing with devotions, daily devotions. And I have here Ellen G. White's The Adventist Home daily devotions. And there's Pilgrim's Progress daily devotions. The Mormon Church has daily devotions. And in the daily devotions, we connect with our spiritual part and seek for guidance. Now, there was a time in 1991 when I was still dealing with 3 generations. Mama was getting into dementia. I still had to work to make a living, and I still had to take the kids back and forth to school every day. And I was exhausted, absolutely exhausted. And I remember one night in October of 1991, when I got down on my knees, I'd had it. And I said, look, God, Jehovah, your name, whatever your name is, I can't do this anymore. Whatever I'm doing is on the wrong page. Would you kindly can we just start over? Can we just start over? All right. And so I went to sleep, and the next morning I woke up, and it was the most amazing experience. You know how when you have a radio on in the background, you hear all that din all the time, okay? My ex-husband used to have the radio on all the time. I woke up the next morning, and my mind was free and empty. It was like, oh, hello. Am I here now? Is this new? Wow. Imagine this. And that's when I began my automatic writing experience and my language experience and my semantics. And I began hearing stuff and figuring out, well, where's this coming from? Where's that coming from? That's when I recognized that you don't believe everything you happen to think, okay? Because our minds are truly more like a radio receiver than they are to do the work of calculating. Now, I think different races do the work of calculating in different places in the body, because when I meet with my Black neighbors, they're right at the heart all the time. They're just right at the heart, bang. You know, you just feel them. When they say hello to you, you can feel their hello. And then I know of people who think with their spleen, and they are energized and they are angry and they have a grudge going on. You know, they get their anger. Their anger is their source of energy for the day. And they got a chip on their shoulder. Okay. So they're thinking with their spleen, and other people think from other parts of their body. All right. And so that's when I realized that the process of hooking the will and the mind and the spirit and the heart up doesn't always occur the same way. All right. So I began to listen to more people. Okay. I spent time with the Mennonites, and I spent 3 years with the Quakers. And in the Quaker meeting, you know, it's total silence. And what happens is you get a thought. And so you speak your thought, and then the next person speaks their thought, and the next person speaks their thought. And at the end of an hour of silence, we've all heard a message. How neat. Okay. Now the Quaker church is different. The Quaker church is very evangelical and Bible belt, but the Quaker meeting was very interesting. That's when I began to realize that I could hear stuff that would have an impact on who I am and what I do. And so that's when I began taking prayer seriously, the way the Trappists did. Because the Trappists were guided by their prayer life, the way the charismatics are guided by their prayer life. And so that's where I have come to be able to listen to the souls that I hear. They don't, you know, I don't hear everybody, but I hear who I hear. And that's how I came to write my book, Diversity in the Will of God. This was a year on the internet where we played a little game. Remember the book, Conversations with God? All right. And so for a year on the net, on several forums, I had people asking me questions to God, and he answered them. I didn't answer them. I sure didn't know what the answers were. But that's the basis of this particular book, God's point of view on a lot of topics that didn't appear either in the witness materials or the Episcopalian materials or anybody else's materials. They had to do with his history. They had to do with what he was confronted with here and what he is confronted with here. And it's all very interesting. And so I wanted to share with my viewers my history, how it is that I got into listening in my prayer life for what might be helpful, what might enable or facilitate, or resolve, or solve, or fix. Okay? So I thought a little bit of my history would serve my viewers to, so you know where I'm coming from and why it is that I come from a solid Bible study background. But over the years, I have learned that when people are listening to God, anyone can be your teacher and recite or give back to you a message that they got from God. Okay? The way my little Yiddish grandmother used to say to me, she lived to be 91. She said, everybody in the world knows something that I don't know yet. And so I can listen to everyone's story. This has been Emily Windsor Craig. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope my little talks here are of interest to you. If so, hit the subscribe and the bell, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye. Okay.